The rain was falling hard across the dusty Texas plains, drumming against the old barn roof like 1,000 tiny hammers. Lightning flashed across the endless horizon, illuminating the lonely silhouette of a man leaning against a wooden post. His name was Clay Weston, a cowboy who spoke little and trusted even less. The world had taken too much from him, his wife, his child, his peace. All that remained was his land, his horses, and the silence he'd chosen as armor. But that night, silence was broken by a faint sound, a cry so soft, so trembling, it almost vanished under the storm's roar. Clay straightened, narrowing his eyes toward the sound. It came again, a whimper. Not from any animal. It was human. Without hesitation, he grabbed his lantern and strode out into the rain. By the edge of his corral, beneath the trembling branches of an oak, a small figure huddled in the mud. A girl, barely 16, soaked to the bone, shivering like a wounded bird. Her hair was tangled, her face streaked with tears and dirt. When the light of his lantern touched her, she flinched violently, lifting her bruised hands to her face. "Please, don't beat me," she whimpered. "I'm already hurt." The words stopped Clay cold. He froze, the lantern trembling slightly in his grasp. Those words, raw, trembling, filled with terror, cut through the fortress of silence he had built around his heart. He knelt slowly, setting the lantern beside her. "Ain't nobody gonna hurt you here," he said in his low, gravelly voice. The girl looked up, eyes wide with disbelief. "You're safe," he added softly. She didn't move, didn't trust. Clay could see the purple bruises along her wrists, the torn fabric of her dress, the way she held herself, half-starved, half-broken. "Come on," he said gently, extending his hand. For a long moment, she didn't take it. But then, with the faintest flicker of trust, her trembling fingers touched his palm. Clay led her toward the barn, his coat draped over her shoulders. Inside, he built a fire in the corner and handed her a dry blanket. She sat there quietly, staring into the flames. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lila," she whispered. "Lila May." Clay nodded. "You got people looking for you, Lila May." She shook her head. "No, sir. Not anymore." Her voice cracked. "My stepfather, he said I was useless. When my mama died, he started drinking. When I dropped a plate, he beat me. When I tried to run, he caught me. Tonight, I ran again. I couldn't take it no more." Her words trembled, like the firelight flickering in her eyes. Clay felt something deep inside shift, something he hadn't felt in years. He remembered the sound of his own daughter's laughter before the fever took her. He remembered the night he buried her and swore never to feel again. But looking at Lila, bruised and shaking, something inside him broke free. "You're safe here," he said again. "Ain't nobody touchin' you while I'm breathin'." The storm raged all night. Lila fell asleep by the fire, wrapped in Clay's old blanket. He sat across from her, the firelight dancing on his face, his heart heavy yet alive. When dawn came, the ranch was silent. Again, only the wind through the grass and the soft whinny of horses. Clay made coffee and some biscuits, setting one by Lila's side when she woke. "You can stay," he said, almost surprising himself. "Help out around the ranch if you want. No one'll bother you here." Lila's eyes filled with tears. But this time, they weren't from fear, they were from hope. Days turned into weeks. Lila worked quietly, helping with the animals, cleaning, learning how to saddle a horse. She laughed sometimes, soft, nervous, but real. And every time she laughed, Clay felt his heart stir. He'd ride out to the pasture and find himself watching her feed the horses, her hair catching the morning sun. She was like a wildflower that had survived a storm, fragile, yet growing strong again. But the past has a way of finding those who try to run. One morning, Clay was mending a fence when he saw dust rising on the road, a wagon coming fast. A man jumped down, broad and red-faced, with eyes that burned like hatred. "Where's the girl?" he snarled. Clay didn't answer. "She's mine. Ran off last month." I'll take her home and teach her what happens to runaways. Clay's hand tightened around the hammer he was holding. You lay a hand on that girl again, he said quietly. And you won't have a hand left. The men sneered. She's my property. Clay stepped forward, his jaw set. Ain't nobody property. Not in my sight. Lila appeared in the doorway, frozen in terror. The men lunged forward, shouting her name, but Clay moved like a storm. He grabbed the man's arm, twisted it behind his back, and shoved him to the ground. You don't touch her. You don't come back. You don't even breathe her name again. The men scrambled up, cursing, but when he saw the cold fury in Clay's eyes, he turned and fled down the road. Lila stood there, shaking, tears running down her face. He'll come back, she whispered. Not while I'm here, Clay said. He won't dare. That night, Lila sat beside the fire again. Why'd you do that for me? She asked. Clay looked into the flames. Because no one did it for me when I needed it most, he said quietly. Because I know what it's like to lose everything. Lila reached out, her small hand touching his. Thank you, she whispered. The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore, it was warm. Full of unspoken healing. Weeks passed. The ranch came alive again, laughter returned. Songs drifted through the evening air. Clay started talking more, smiling sometimes. The once cold and broken cowboy had begun to change. And one morning, as the sun rose over the fields, he saw Lila riding his late daughter's horse. Her laughter echoing across the hills. Something deep inside him, something long buried, finally came alive. Lila looked toward him and waved, her eyes shining. You're smiling, Mr. Weston. She called out. Clay chuckled. Guess I am. For the first time in years, he felt peace. The kind of peace that comes not from forgetting pain, but from finding someone who makes it worth living through. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky, Lila said softly, You changed. Didn't you? Clay nodded. Maybe you changed me. She smiled through tears. Then I'm glad I ran here. The wind carried her words across the ranch. Through the golden fields, as the last rays of light kissed the land. Clay looked at her, the girl who had come out of the storm, and realized she had healed more than her own wounds, she had healed his too. The silent cowboy wasn't silent anymore. And as the screen fades to black, the narrator's voice gently urges the audience.